The ship came out of faster than light travel above a planet that glowed purple and gold. Daniel Shaw stood at the window of the small human vessel and looked down at the world below. This was Valoria, the heart of an empire that ruled over 2,000 star systems. No human had ever set foot on this world before today. Daniel was 34 years old. He had brown hair that was going gray at the sides, even though he was still young. His eyes were blue and calm. He had been a soldier for 12 years before becoming a diplomatic officer. He had seen war. He had seen death. He had learned that the universe was not kind to those who showed weakness. Behind him, Ambassador Claire Bennett checked her datapad one more time. She was 72 years old with white hair and a face full of lines from a lifetime of difficult work. She had spent 40 years talking to aliens, making deals, and keeping Earth safe through words instead of weapons. "Remember the rules," Claire said without looking up. "We bow when we enter the throne room. We do not speak unless spoken to. We accept whatever terms they offer, and we say thank you." Daniel turned from the window. "And if their terms are bad for Earth, then we accept them anyway and negotiate later. We are not here to make demands. We are here to survive." Daniel said nothing. He understood the situation. Humanity had only been traveling among the stars for 200 years. They had a small fleet of ships. They had colonies on 40 worlds. They were nobody in a galaxy full of ancient and powerful empires. The Valorian Empire was the oldest and strongest of them all. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had crushed rebellions, destroyed entire species, and burned worlds that refused to obey them. Every intelligent species in known space had submitted to them eventually. Now it was humanity's turn. The ship descended through purple clouds and landed on a platform made of crystal. When the doors opened, Daniel saw that they were surrounded by guards. The guards were tall, nearly 3 meters high, with skin the color of dark blue water. They wore armor that seemed to glow from within and carried weapons that Daniel could not identify. A smaller alien approached them. This one had violet skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face. It wore robes of silver and gold. "I am Counselor Veth," the alien said. The translator in Daniel's ear turned the strange sounds into English. "I will take you to the throne room. You will be presented to Emperor Vareth, the Eternal, and Princess Selen, heir to the throne." Claire stepped forward with a practiced smile. "We are honored to be received. Earth sends its warmest greetings to the Valorian Empire." Veth looked at her with all 4 eyes. There was no warmth in that look. "Follow me. Do not speak to anyone. Do not touch anything. Do not look directly at the Emperor for more than 3 seconds at a time." They followed Veth through halls made of stone that sparkled like it had stars trapped inside it. The ceilings were so high that Daniel could barely see them. Everything was designed to make visitors feel small and weak. It was working. They passed through room after room. Each one was filled with aliens of every shape and size. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some floated in the air. Some crawled on many legs. All of them stopped what they were doing to watch the humans pass. Daniel heard whispers translated by his device. "Those are the new ones. The humans. They look so fragile. How did they even survive on their world? They will bow like all the others. Give them a month, and they will be begging for scraps from the Emperor's table." Daniel kept his face blank. He had learned long ago not to show his feelings to enemies. And make no mistake, these aliens were not friends. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Finally, they reached a massive door made of something that looked like solid gold, but shimmered like liquid. Veth turned to face them. "Beyond this door is the throne room. When you enter, you will walk to the marked position on the floor. You will stop there. You will bow deeply and hold the bow until you are told to rise. You will not speak unless asked a direct question. You will address the Emperor as your Eternal Majesty and the Princess as your Radiant Highness. Do you understand? Claire nodded. We understand. Veth looked at Daniel. And you, soldier? Do you understand? Daniel met the alien's 4 eyes. I heard you. Something flickered across Veth's face. It might have been surprise or anger or both. Then the counselor turned and touched the door. It swung open without a sound. The throne room was the largest enclosed space Daniel had ever seen. It stretched for what seemed like a kilometer, lined on both sides with platforms where hundreds of aliens stood watching. The ceiling was made of glass, and through it, Daniel could see 3 moons hanging in the purple sky. At the far end of the room sat the throne. It was carved from a single piece of something that looked like diamond but glowed with inner light. On the throne sat Emperor Varth, ancient and terrible, his body thin but his presence filling the entire room. Beside the throne stood a female alien. She was younger, her violet skin smooth and perfect, her 4 silver eyes cold and sharp. She wore a crown of living light that floated above her head. This was Princess Selen. Daniel and Claire walked forward. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. Every eye in the room was on them. Daniel could feel the weight of those stares, like a physical force pressing down on him. They reached the marked position. It was a circle of darker stone set into the floor. Claire began to bend. Her knees to bow. Daniel did not move. Claire noticed and grabbed his arm. What are you doing? She whispered. Bo. No, Daniel said. The word was quiet, but in the silence of the throne room, it carried like a shout. Princess Selen stepped forward. She walked down the steps from the throne platform with the grace of flowing water. She stopped just 2 meters from Daniel and looked at him with all 4 of her silver eyes. Human, she said. Her voice was beautiful but cold, like music played on ice. You stand in the presence of the eternal throne. Every being who enters this chamber bows before our magnificence. It is the law. It is tradition. It is the natural order of things. She tilted her head slightly. Why don't you bow? The silence that followed was total. Daniel could hear his own heart beating. He could feel Claire's terror beside him. He could sense the shock and anger building in the watching crowd. But he thought of Earth. He thought of his grandfather, who had died fighting for freedom. He thought of his mother, who had taught him that some things were worth more than safety. He thought of 8 billion humans who had never asked for permission to exist. Daniel looked directly into the princess's silver eyes. Your Highness, he said, his voice steady and clear, humanity bows to no one. The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. The entire throne room seemed frozen in time. Then everything exploded at once. Aliens shouted in a dozen different languages. Guards rushed forward, their weapons making a high-pitched sound as they powered up. Claire grabbed Daniel's arm and held on tight, her face white with fear. Princess Selen raised one hand. Just that. One hand lifted into the air. And somehow, that small movement stopped everything. The guards froze. The shouting died. The entire room fell silent again. The princess had not taken her eyes off Daniel. Her 4 silver eyes studied him like he was an insect under glass. But there was something else in that look now. Something Daniel could not identify. No one, she repeated, her voice soft but carrying to every corner of the room. You say humanity bows to no one. Do you understand what those words mean in this place? I understand perfectly, Daniel said. Do you? Selen took a step closer to him. She was taller than him by a head, and she used that height to look down at him. You stand in the throne room of an empire that has ruled for 10,000 years. We have destroyed species older than your sun. We have crushed armadas that blocked out the light of stars, We have ended civilizations that thought themselves eternal. She leaned down slightly, bringing her face closer to his. And you, from a species that learned to make fire only yesterday, tell me that you will not bow? Daniel did not step back. He did not look away. That is correct, Your Highness. Then you are a fool, Selen said. Or you have come here to die. Neither, Daniel replied. I have come here to represent my people, and my people do not kneel. Claire stepped forward, trying to save the situation. Your Radiant Highness, please forgive this misunderstanding. Lieutenant Commander Shaw does not speak for Earth. I am the official ambassador, and I assure you that humanity means no disrespect to the throne. We are simply unused to galactic customs and silence. Selen did not even look at her. I am not speaking to you, old one. I am speaking to this man who thinks he can look upon me as an equal. She straightened and began to walk in a slow circle around Daniel. The guards watched with weapons ready. The crowd of alien delegates leaned forward, eager to see what would happen next. Tell me, human, Selen said as she circled him. What makes you think you have the right to stand when every other species in this galaxy has knelt? The Kreth knelt. They are 10 times your size and 10 times as strong. The Molosi knelt. They had weapons that could crack planets in half. The Yendari knelt. They had 3,000 years of history when your ancestors were still living in caves. She stopped in front of him again. What do humans have that they did not? Daniel thought carefully before answering. He knew that everything depended on his next words. One wrong phrase and Earth could burn. We have ourselves, he said finally. Selen's 4 eyes narrowed. Explain. The Kreth are strong, Daniel said. The Molosi had weapons. The Yendari had history. But none of them had the one thing that matters most. The thing that cannot be measured or counted or compared. And what is that? Refusal, Daniel said. The absolute refusal to accept that any being has the right to rule over another. The deep belief, down in our bones, that we would rather die standing than live on our knees. A murmur went through the crowd. Daniel caught fragments through his translator. Words like arrogance and madness and death wish. But Princess Selen did not look angry. She looked interested. You believe this, she said. It was not a question. I know this, Daniel replied. It is written in our blood. We have fought wars against each other for thousands of years. Brother against brother, nation against nation, idea against idea. It has made us hard. It has made us cruel sometimes. But it has also made us free. We have never had one ruler for all humans. We have never bowed to a single throne. Even our gods we argue with. And yet here you are, Selen said. Weak, small. Your entire fleet could not match a single battle group of our navy. We could destroy your species in an afternoon. Does that not make you afraid? Daniel smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. Of course I am afraid. Only a fool feels no fear when facing death. But fear and submission are not the same thing. I can be afraid and still refuse to kneel. Why? Selen demanded. What is the point of dying for pride? It is not pride, Daniel said. It is something older than that. Something deeper. When a human bows, they are not just bending their body. They are breaking something inside themselves. Something that cannot be fixed. He paused, choosing his next words with care. Your Highness, if you destroy Earth tomorrow, you will kill 8 billion people. That is a tragedy beyond words. But if I bow to you today, I will do something worse. I will tell every human who comes after me that we are not equal to others. That we are meant to serve. That we should accept our place at the bottom. Daniel shook his head slowly. I cannot do that. I will not do that. My people survived ice ages. They survived plagues. They survived their own worst impulses. They climbed out of the darkness and reached for the stars. And they did all of that because they believed, truly believed, that they had the right to exist on their own terms. He looked directly into Selen's silver eyes. If I bow now, I take that away from them. All of it. Every struggle, every sacrifice, every death that brought us to this moment. I make it all mean nothing. Selen stared at him for a long moment. The throne room was utterly silent. Even the Emperor had risen from his seat and was watching with something like attention on his ancient face. Finally, the princess spoke. You would die for this belief? Yes. You would watch your world burn? If there was no other choice, yes. You would doom your entire species to extinction rather than bend your knee for one moment? Daniel took a deep breath. Your Highness, humanity has never faced a choice like this before. But I know, with complete certainty, what they would say if they were here. They would say yes. 1,000 times yes. 1,000,000 times yes. Because a humanity that bows is no longer humanity. It is something less. Something broken. He spread his hands. I cannot give you something that is not mine to give. Our freedom belongs to all of us. I cannot trade it away, even to save us. Princess Selen looked at him for a long time. Her expression was impossible to read. Then, slowly, she did something that made every alien in the room gasp. She laughed. It was not a cruel laugh. It was not mocking or angry. It was surprised and genuine and almost delighted. Father, she said, turning to the Emperor, I think we have finally found what we were looking for. The Emperor rose from his throne. In 10,000 years, no one had seen Vorath the Eternal stand from his seat during a formal audience. It was unheard of. It was impossible. The Emperor was the center of the universe. Others came to him. He never went to them. Yet now he was walking down the steps, his ancient body moving slowly but with purpose. The crowd of delegates parted before him like water before a ship. Guards stepped aside. Counselors bowed so low their faces nearly touched the floor. Daniel watched him approach. The Emperor was old beyond human understanding. His skin was dark violet, almost black, and covered with thin lines like cracks in ancient pottery. His two eyes, only two, Daniel noticed, unlike his daughter, were gold and burned with a fierce intelligence. He stopped 3 meters from Daniel and studied the human with those burning eyes. Do you know why the Valorian Empire has lasted for 10,000 years? Vorath asked. His voice was rough, like stones grinding together, but it filled the entire room. I do not, Your Majesty, Daniel replied. Most believe it is because of our military power, the Emperor said. Our fleets, our weapons, our ability to destroy anyone who opposes us. He shook his head slowly. They are wrong. Power alone does not build empires that last. Power without purpose is just destruction. He began to walk in a slow circle around Daniel, much as his daughter had done. But where Selen had moved like a predator examining prey, Vorath moved like a teacher examining a student. We have lasted because we have been searching, the Emperor continued. For 10,000 years, we have searched for something precious, something rare, something we feared did not exist in this galaxy. What have you been searching for? Daniel asked. Vorath stopped in front of him and smiled. It was a strange expression on that ancient face, like watching a mountain try to be friendly. Equals, the Emperor said. The word sent a shock through the room. Delegates whispered to each other in confusion. Even Claire, standing frozen beside Daniel, looked bewildered. I do not understand, Daniel said. Vorath turned and walked toward the throne, gesturing for Daniel to follow. It was such a casual gesture. so different from the rigid protocol that had surrounded everything else, that Daniel hesitated. "Come," the Emperor said. "Walk with me. I will explain." Daniel looked at Claire. She nodded slightly, her eyes wide but her diplomatic training holding. He followed the Emperor. Selen fell into step beside them, her silver eyes watching Daniel with new interest. "When the Valorian Empire was young," Vareth said as they walked, "we were much like your people, proud, defiant. We bowed to no one. We fought our way to the stars and demanded our place among them." He stopped at the base of the throne and turned to face the room. "But as we grew in power, something strange happened. Every species we encountered eventually submitted to us. The Kreth, who could crush us with their bare hands, knelt within days of meeting us. The Molosi fought for 100 years, but when we defeated them, they accepted their place beneath us. The Endari negotiated and bargained and delayed, but in the end, they too bowed." The Emperor's voice grew heavy with something that sounded almost like sadness. "At first, we thought this was victory. We thought we were building the greatest empire the galaxy had ever seen. But over time, we began to understand the truth." "What truth?" Daniel asked. "That a species which surrenders its dignity will never rise again," Vareth said. "The Kreth became our warriors, but they lost their ability to think for themselves. The Molosi became our engineers, but they stopped creating new things. The Endari became our administrators, but they forgot how to dream." Selen stepped forward. "We did not conquer the galaxy to collect servants. We conquered it to find partners, allies, other species who could stand beside us and help us reach even higher. But everyone we met eventually bowed," Vareth said. "Everyone eventually broke. We began to believe that perhaps we were alone. Perhaps there was no other species in the entire galaxy that understood what we understood." "And what is that?" Daniel asked. The Emperor looked at him with those ancient golden eyes. "That dignity is not something that can be given or taken," Vareth said. "It can only be surrendered. And once surrendered, it can never be reclaimed." Daniel felt something shift inside him. He had expected to face enemies today. He had expected threats and demands and the cold calculation of power. He had not expected this. "The bow," he said slowly. "It was never about respect. It was a test." "Yes," Selen said. "Every species that enters this throne room is given the same chance. They are told to bow. Most do so immediately, eager to please, hoping to gain favor. Some resist at first, but eventually give in. A few fight, but when they are defeated, they accept their loss and kneel. In 10,000 years, Vareth said, no species has ever simply refused. No species has ever said that they would rather die than surrender their dignity." He reached out and placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. It was a gesture of incredible intimacy, something that would have been unthinkable just minutes ago. "Until today," the Emperor said. "Until you." Daniel's mind was racing. The implications of what he was hearing were enormous. Everything humanity thought they knew about the Valorian Empire was wrong. They were not tyrants. They were not conquerors. They were searchers, looking for something they had almost given up hope of finding. "What happens now?" Daniel asked. "Now," Selen said, stepping closer, "everything changes. For you, for us, for the entire galaxy." She turned and addressed the crowd of delegates, raising her voice so all could hear. "For 10,000 years, the lesser species have believed that they bowed because they had no choice. They believed that we forced them into submission through power alone. This was a convenient lie that protected them from the truth." Her voice hardened. "The truth is that they chose to bow. They chose comfort over dignity. They chose safety over freedom. They could have refused, just as this human has refused. But they did not. And in making that choice, They proved that they were not ready to stand among the stars as equals. The delegates looked at each other in confusion and fear. Some began to protest, but one look from Selen silenced them. "Today marks a new era," the Emperor announced. "Humanity has proven themselves worthy of something that no other species has achieved in 10,000 years. They will not join the Empire as subjects. They will join us as partners, as equals, as members of the true ruling council of the galaxy." Daniel heard Claire make a small sound of shock behind him. He understood how she felt. They had come here expecting to negotiate for scraps, hoping just to survive. Instead, they were being offered something beyond their wildest dreams. But Daniel was a soldier. He knew that nothing came without a price. "And what do you want in return?" he asked. Vara smiled that strange mountainous smile again. "We want you to help us wake the others," he said. "We want you to show them what they have forgotten. We want you to teach them how to stand." He gestured at the crowd of delegates. "These species have been sleeping for millennia. They have forgotten who they could be. They need someone to remind them that the chains they wear are chains they put on themselves." The Emperor's golden eyes burned with sudden intensity. They need someone to show them how to be free. The throne room was in chaos. Delegates from 100 worlds shouted over each other, their voices mixing into a wall of noise that the translator in Daniel's ear could not sort through. Some demanded explanations. Others called for the humans to be arrested. A few stood in stunned silence, their entire understanding of the universe crumbling around them. Daniel watched it all with the calm eyes of a man who had seen battles and survived them. He had learned long ago that chaos was just fear wearing a mask. The delegates were not angry. They were terrified. Everything they had believed for thousands of years was being destroyed in front of them. A tall alien with green scales pushed through the crowd. He wore medals and decorations that marked him as someone important. His yellow eyes fixed on Daniel with pure hatred. "This is lies," the alien shouted. "This cannot be truth. We of the Kreth have served the Empire faithfully for 8,000 years. We did not choose to bow. We were forced." Selen turned to face him, her expression cold. "Were you? Tell me, Lord Commander Grath, what force was used against you?" The Kreth hesitated. "The Empire's military power, your weapons, your fleets." "And when you faced those fleets," Selen said, "what happened?" We saw that we could not win." "You saw that victory would be costly," Selen corrected. "You saw that fighting would mean sacrifice and pain and death. So you chose the easier path. You chose to kneel rather than risk everything for your freedom." The Kreth scales darkened with what might have been shame or anger. "What choice did we have? We would have been destroyed." "You would have fought," Selen said. "Perhaps you would have lost. Perhaps your species would have been reduced to a fraction of what it was. But that fraction would have been free. That fraction would have had its dignity intact." She stepped closer to the Kreth commander. "Instead, your entire species kneeled. Every single one of you. And in doing so, you told us, and more importantly, you told yourselves, that you were not worth fighting for. That comfort was more valuable than pride. That survival was more important than freedom." The Kreth had no answer to this. He stepped back into the crowd, his yellow eyes downcast. Daniel felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of him understood the Kreth's choice. Facing certain defeat, choosing survival over extinction seemed logical. It seemed wise. But another part of him knew that Selen was right. There was something that mattered more than survival. Something that made survival worth having in the first place. He stepped forward and raised his voice. "Your Highness, Your Majesty, may I speak?" Vorath nodded. "You have earned that right." Daniel turned to face the crowd of delegates. Hundreds of alien eyes watched him, some with hostility, some with confusion. A few with something that might have been hope. "I am Daniel Shaw," he said. "I am just a soldier. I am not a philosopher or a king or a prophet. I am just a man who would not kneel." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I cannot tell you what to think or what to feel about what you have learned today. I cannot tell you that you were wrong to make the choices your ancestors made. I was not there. I did not face what they faced." He began to walk slowly along the front of the crowd, making eye contact with as many delegates as he could. "But I can tell you this. The past is done. The choices your ancestors made are finished. They cannot be unmade. What matters now is what you choose today, what you choose tomorrow, what you choose every day for the rest of your lives." He stopped in front of a small delegate with soft brown fur and large dark eyes. The alien looked frightened. "What is your name?" Daniel asked gently. "I am 10th Secretary Myra of the Delori," the alien said in a voice barely above a whisper. "Myra," Daniel said, "did you choose to serve the Empire?" I was born into service. My parents served. Their parents served. It is what we do. But if you could choose," Daniel said, "if you could decide right now to be something else, would you?" Myra's dark eyes grew wide. It was clear that no one had ever asked this question before. Perhaps no one had ever thought to ask it. I do not know," Myra admitted. "I do not know what else I could be." Daniel nodded. "That is honest. And it is where we all begin. In not knowing." He turned to address the entire crowd again. "Humanity does not kneel because we have always known something you did not. We do not kneel because we are braver or stronger or smarter than you. We do not kneel because we have some special quality that you lack." He spread his hands. "We do not kneel because we made a choice. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors looked at the universe and decided that they would face it standing up. That choice became part of who we are. It was passed down from parent to child, generation after generation, until it became as natural to us as breathing." He lowered his hands. "You can make that same choice. Not your ancestors. You. Today. Right now." The crowd was silent. Daniel could feel the weight of their attention, the intensity of their consideration. Something was shifting in the room. Something old was beginning to crack. Vara stepped forward. "The human speaks truth. We have given you all the same opportunity we gave them. The door was never locked. The chains were never real. You could have refused at any time. You could have stood instead of knelt. But how?" Someone called out from the crowd. "How do we stand when we have knelt for so long? How do we remember dignity we have never known?" It was a good question. Daniel had to admit he did not know the answer. How do you teach pride to someone who has only known submission? How do you give freedom to someone who has forgotten what it means? Claire stepped forward. She had been silent through all of this, watching and listening and thinking. Now she spoke, and her voice carried the weight of 70 years of wisdom. "You start small," she said. "You do not try to change everything at once. You find one small moment each day where you can choose for yourself instead of obeying without thought. You find one small way to say, 'This is who I am, not what I am told to be.'" She walked to stand beside Daniel. "On Earth, we have a saying, 'A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.' You do not have to become free today. You just have to take the first step. And then another. And then another. And eventually, you will look back and realize that you are standing where you once knelt." Myra the Delori raised a trembling hand. "And will the Empire punish us for taking these steps?" Selen answered before anyone else could speak. "No. The Empire has never punished anyone for refusing to bow. We never needed to. You punished yourselves. You chose submission because it was easier, and then you convinced yourselves that it was required. She looked at her father, and something passed between them. Some silent communication that Daniel could not read. From this day forward, Vorath announced, humanity will serve as teachers. They will help any species that wishes to remember its dignity. They will show you how to stand. He paused. But we will not force you. That would defeat the purpose. You must choose for yourselves. That is the whole point. Daniel looked out at the crowd of delegates. He saw fear in many faces. Fear of change. Fear of the unknown. Fear of a future that looked nothing like the past. But he also saw something else in some of those faces. A tiny spark of something long forgotten. A faint memory of what it might feel like to be free. It was a beginning. 1 year passed. Daniel stood on the observation deck of the first human embassy ever built outside the Sol system. Through the huge windows, he could see ships coming and going from dozens of worlds. Kreth warships, Delori transports, Molosi cargo haulers, even a few elegant Yindari cruisers with their distinctive silver hulls, all of them coming to Earth's embassy. All of them coming to learn the galaxy had changed more in 1 year than it had in the previous 1,000. The news of what had happened in the Valorian throne room had spread to every corner of known space. The story of the human who would not bow had become legend, but the story was only the beginning. After the announcement, Daniel had expected trouble. He had expected the subject species to resent humanity, to see them as upstarts who had exposed uncomfortable truths. He had been wrong. Instead, something beautiful had happened. Species that had lived in quiet submission for thousands of years had begun to wake up. The Kreth had been first, their warrior pride stirring after millennia of sleep. They had sent a delegation to Earth asking to learn human combat philosophy. Not weapons, not tactics, philosophy. They wanted to understand what made humans willing to fight against impossible odds. The Delori had followed. Mira, the frightened secretary Daniel had spoken to in the throne room, had become the leader of a movement among her people. They called themselves the Standing Ones, and their numbers grew every day. Even the ancient Yindari, who had convinced themselves that their submission was really clever negotiation, had begun to question old assumptions. A few of them, anyway. Change came slowly to a species that measured its history in thousands of years. The door behind Daniel opened, and he turned to see Claire walking toward him. She looked older than she had a year ago, but there was a light in her eyes that had not been there before. "The Delori delegation is ready," she said. "They want to discuss opening a dignity school on their homeworld." Daniel smiled. Dignity schools. That was what they were calling the institutions humanity had helped create across the galaxy. Places where beings learned not facts or skills, but something more fundamental. They learned that they had the right to exist on their own terms. "I will be there in a moment," Daniel said. "I just needed a minute." Claire came to stand beside him at the window. For a while, they watched the ships in silence. "I used to think my job was to keep Earth safe," Claire said quietly. 30 years of diplomacy, all focused on one goal: survival. Make the right deals. Say the right words. Keep your head down and hope the bigger powers ignore you. She shook her head. "I was wrong. I was so afraid of what might happen that I forgot to think about what should happen." Daniel understood. He had felt the same way standing in the throne room. He had been afraid. Terrified, actually. But fear had not stopped him from doing what was right. "We cannot control what happens," Daniel said. "We can only control who we are when it happens." Claire laughed softly. "When did you become a philosopher?" "Sometime between refusing to bow to an alien princess and becoming the teacher of a galactic civilization. It has been a strange year." The door opened again, and this time it was Princess Selen who entered. She had visited the embassy many times over the past year. At first, it had been official business. Treaties to negotiate, agreements to sign, protocols to establish. But lately, her visits had become more personal. She came to talk, to understand, to learn about this strange species that had done what no one else could do. She crossed to stand on Daniel's other side, her silver eyes reflecting the ships outside. "The Council has finished its review," she said. 17 more species have formally requested admission to the Dignity Program. "That brings the total to over 100, Claire said. "We do not have enough teachers." "You will have to train more," Selen replied. "And not just humans. The first students are ready to become teachers themselves." Daniel thought about that. Kreth warriors teaching other species how to stand tall. Delori administrators showing colleagues how to question instead of just obey. The idea had seemed impossible a year ago. Now it was becoming reality. "My father wishes to speak with you," Selen said to Daniel. "He has something important to discuss." Daniel followed her through the embassy to a private meeting room. Emperor Varth was already there, standing at a window much like the one Daniel had just left. The Emperor looked less ancient somehow, less tired, as if watching the galaxy wake up had given him new strength. "Daniel," Varth said without turning around, "do you know what I was thinking when you refused to bow? I imagine you were considering whether to kill me." Varth laughed, a sound like distant thunder. "No, I was thinking that perhaps I could finally rest." He turned to face Daniel. "For 10,000 years, I have carried the weight of this empire. I have watched species submit and wither. I have seen greatness replaced by obedience. I have wondered every single day if I had made a terrible mistake in building this civilization." The Emperor's golden eyes were soft with something that might have been gratitude. "You have given me hope, Daniel. Not just for humanity, for all of us. You have reminded me why we built this empire in the first place. Not to rule, to lift up." Daniel did not know what to say. He had never expected to have this kind of impact. He had just refused to do something that felt wrong. "I am just one man," he said finally. "I did not change the galaxy. I just stood where I was supposed to stand." "Exactly," Varth said. "That is exactly the point. You did not try to be a hero. You did not make grand speeches or lead armies into battle. You simply refused to compromise who you are. And that small act of personal integrity has changed everything." He reached out and placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder, just as he had done in the throne room a year ago. "The galaxy does not need saviors," Varth said. "It needs examples. It needs individuals who show others what is possible. You are that example, Daniel. You and all of humanity." Later that evening, Daniel stood again at the observation window. The embassy had grown quiet as the day shift ended. The ships outside continued their endless dance, carrying beings to and from 1,000 worlds. Selen found him there, as she often did. "You are thinking again," she said. "You do that too much." "I am thinking about what your father said, about being an example." Selen came to stand close beside him. Over the past year, their relationship had changed. They had started as diplomatic contacts, become allies, then friends. Now, Daniel was not sure what they were. Something new, perhaps. Something that had never existed before between their species. "He's right," Selen said. "But he did not tell you the whole truth. What did he leave out?" Selen turned to look at him with all 4 of her silver eyes. "He did not tell you that you are not just an example for the other species. You are an example for us too. For the Valorians. We had almost forgotten why we started this search. We had become so used to finding species that bowed that we had stopped believing we would ever find ones that would not." She reached out and took his hand. It was a human gesture she had learned over the past year. "You did not just show the galaxy how to stand, Daniel. You reminded us why standing matters. Daniel looked down at her hand in his. Purple skin against pale. Two species so different in form, so similar in spirit. What happens now? He asked. Selen smiled. It was an expression she had also learned from humans, and it transformed her face. Now? Now we build something new. Together. All of us. A galaxy where no one kneels. A civilization where dignity is not earned, but recognized. A future where standing is the natural state of all conscious beings. She squeezed his hand. It will take time. Centuries, perhaps. There will be setbacks and failures and moments when it seems impossible. But we will not stop. We will not give up. We will not bow. Daniel looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 8 billion humans were living their lives. Most of them unaware of how much had changed because one of their own had refused to kneel. He thought about his grandfather, who had died fighting for freedom. He thought about his mother, who had taught him that dignity was worth more than safety. He thought about all the humans throughout history who had stood when standing was hard, who had refused when refusing was dangerous, who had insisted on their right to be free when freedom seemed impossible. They had given him something precious. Not just life, but the values that made life worth living. And now he had a chance to give that gift to an entire galaxy. Unbowed, he said softly. Unbroken, Selen replied. United. Outside, the ships continued their endless dance among the stars. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, beings who had knelt for millennia were learning one small step at a time. Out of Standot, the princess had asked why he did not bow. His answer had shattered an empire. But from the broken pieces, something new was being built. Something better. Something that would endure long after the last star burned out and the final darkness fell. Galaxy that stood together, forever.